So last week there was this video of Hillary Clinton that was making the rounds in conservative circles online. And I just can't help but feel that a lot of these channels, they're missing the sinister point that Hillary's getting to. She's rightly picking up on the fact that, the US have the midterm elections coming up on the 8th of November. But there's actually a deeper fight that's going on in preparation for the 2024 election for the president of the United States. Have a listen to the clip from Hillary Clinton. Let me know what you think. And then listen to my explanation at the end. And I think it'll make a bit more sense about what she's alluding to.
I'm here to highlight something that is keeping me up at night. I know we're all focused on the 2022 midterm elections, but we also have to look ahead because you know what? Our opponents certainly are. Right-wing extremists already have a plan to literally steal the next presidential election. And they're not making a secret of it. The right-wing controlled Supreme Court may be poised to rule on giving state legislatures, yes, you heard me that correctly, state legislatures the power to overturn presidential elections. Just think, if that happens, the 2024 presidential election could be decided not by the popular vote or even by the anachronistic Electoral College, but by state legislatures, many of them Republican-controlled. But there's also good news in the face of this very real threat to democracy. Indivisible has launched Crush the Coup to make sure we're ready to defend democracy in 2024. They've put together a list of critical races in 6 key states and how you can get involved. Each of these races is highly competitive, and your dollars could very well decide the winners and the winner of the next presidential election.
All right, now I understand, right-wing extremists, we're all having a gag reflex to what she's just said, and it's crap. But there's a deeper meaning there. She's talking about 6 key races in these specific states, most of which are swing states that decided the 2020 election for President Trump and President Biden. In order to understand what she's saying, we've got to go back to the 2020 election. The way that elections are decided in America is when a president wins the majority of votes in a state, you're not voting for the presidential candidate. You're voting for a set amount of delegates. What are delegates? There's over 500 delegates, and every state, it's divided by population. So California, big state, there's like at least 50 delegates. Whereas in a place like Florida, a bit smaller, but still big, there's 29 delegates. Now, when a president candidate wins that state, you don't get half the delegates if you win 51% of the vote. You get all of the delegates. So the reason they did that was so that presidential candidates, they would be forced to campaign in all of the states, especially the small ones, so that the big states didn't trample on the rights of the small states. So the key number of delegates that you want to win is 270 delegates. That's how many you need to win. The tallying of these actual votes, they were meant to be done on January 6, 2021. And Vice President Mike Pence has that role. Now, the reason why a lot of Republicans, a lot of MAGA, Trump supporters, they call Mike Pence a traitor is because what he didn't do, and this is something that Professor David Flint, who's an expert in the Constitution, said that he was meant to do, was he was meant to set aside the delegates where there's contention. What happened was there were these 6 or so states, including Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, all these states that decided the race where both the Republicans and the Democrats had sent their delegates. And so there was a bit of confusion. Now, Mike Pence, what he was meant to do, and this is what's happened in previous elections, was he was meant to set those states aside and continue the count because there's obviously some confusion. He's meant to send those delegates back to the state legislatures, and that's why Hillary's freaking out over this. He's meant to send them back to the state legislatures and say, which one am I meant to be counting, the Democrats or the Republicans? I mean, sort your vote out because the states run the elections. But he didn't do that because he was meant to set them aside, but he didn't do that. Instead, he counted the Democrat ones for those swing states and that gave them the magic number of over 270 delegates. So Mike Pence was meant to exclude those delegates from the states where there was contention, and he was meant to basically see if anyone could reach that magic number of 270 delegates. But neither of the candidates would have been able to. It just wasn't enough states, there wasn't enough delegates. So what that triggers is what we call a contingent election. That involves each state getting one vote, and it's the state legislatures that control that. So that's a count between the Republican states and the Democrat states. There are more Republican states than Democrat states that control legislatures, state legislatures. So President Trump would have won that race. And that's where all this idea comes from, that President Trump won the 2020 election. Sure, there was a lot of, accusations of fraud, but the crux of it is Mike Pence didn't do his job properly. And that's not my opinion. That's the same opinion that I arrived to, that Professor David Flint in Australia, constitutional expert, came to. So Hillary Clinton, coming back to her, the reason why she's freaking out about the 2022 midterm election, even though it's just for the state legislatures, is that there are some key races that will decide the 2024 election. If Republicans continue to control the state legislatures, if it goes to a contingent election, then the Constitution will win out. The Republicans will win because there are more Republican states than Democrat states. Hillary talks about this being anti-democratic, the popular vote not winning. America is a constitutional republic. They're not a democracy. That's not how it works. And so the fact that she's doing this is a soft form of manipulation. The truth is that is the constitutional way the American Constitution is meant to work. Professor David Flint backs it up. A number of professors in America back it up. And the idea that it's a steal, Hillary, of all people, should not be talking, especially after the 2016 election.